So now we are going to see about the mood disorders. Mood disorders are one of the important topic often asked in entrance examination, and you're supposed to remember the features of hypomania, mania, and major depressive disorders, their pharmacological management, some theories associated with these conditions, some terminologies, all are very important. So let us now go to mood disorders. So before going to mood disorders, you should understand that there is something called as a mood episode. A patient may come to you as a mood episode. Based on a mood episode, you can distinguish into three types. One is so-called mania. The second one is like a lesser form of mania, which is called as a hypomania. And the other one is so-called a major depressive episode. So these are the three ways in which a mood episode is classified. So it can be mania, it can be hypomania, or it can be major depressive episode. So this is how an episode, a patient may be presenting to you may be in mania or hypomania or major depressive episode. As per ICD-10, when a patient presents in the first time in his life with mania, the diagnosis is like a manic episode. When the patient presents in the first time as hypomania, you call it a hypomanic episode. And first time when it presents with the depression, you call it as a major depressive episode, which can be mild, moderate, or severe based on certain symptoms that which we will see. But it's not common that a patient will remit with a single episode. Several times they can have another episode in the lifetime. So when an episode again happens in the lifetime, the diagnosis will be changed. For a patient who had mania, this patient, if he comes again with another episode of mania or another episode of depression, he will be called as bipolar disorder, bipolar affective disorder. Or even if this hypomania patient again having further manic episodes or depressive episodes also, the same bipolar affective disorder is applicable as per ICD-10. If the patient is presenting only having more than one depressive episodes and no other manic or hypomanic episode in the past, then you will call it as recurrent depressive disorder. So the diagnosis can be bipolar affective disorder, current episode mania, or current episode depression, or current episode hypomania. Or if only depression, it can be recurrent depressive disorder, current episode, whether it is mild, moderate, or severe depression. So this is how we place the diagnosis in mood disorders as per ICD-10. The change in DSM is that in DSM, presence of one mixed episode or one mania. Mixed means it consists of both constellation of both the symptoms in the same episode. Or presentation of one manic episode itself is enough to call it as bipolar disorder. So this is as per DSM. So as per DSM, presence of one mixed episode or one manic episode itself can be called as bipolar disorder. Whereas in ICD, you know that with one manic episode, you will call only it as manic episode. You won't call it as bipolar. But for hypomania, you will require another depressive episode to diagnose as bipolar disorder as per DSM-5. And bipolar disorder, there is bipolar I and bipolar II in DSM. Bipolar I means the patient had manic episode or manic and depressive episode, whereas in bipolar II, the patient had only hypomanic and depressive episode. You should have both hypomanic and depressive episode. Whereas if there is history of a manic episode or manic and depressive episodes, you call it as bipolar type 1. So this is what is now classified in DSM-5. So we are supposed to understand the features of a major depressive episode, the features of a hypomanic episode, and the features of manic episode. How will we diagnose? So before that, you should understand that major depressive episode is very common with the prevalence of 5 to 17%, and it is more common and twofold prevalence is there in males. compared to bipolar I, which is having equal prevalence in both male and female. Major depressive disorder is having more prevalence in females and is more common, 5 to 17%. And bipolar disorder is having an earlier age of onset than depression. So now let us see how will you diagnose a major depressive episode. For diagnosis of a major depressive episode as per ICD-10, you require a minimum duration of 2 weeks. Be it ICD or DSM, you require a minimum duration of 2 weeks. Once again, I would like to highlight the fact that certain durations are very important. For obsessive compulsive disorder, we have seen as per ICD, you require 2 weeks. Phobic and anxiety symptoms requires 6 months. The somatic symptom disorder and hypochondriasis, etc., we found that we require more than 6 months. And acute stress disorder less than 1 month, and more than 1 month it is post-traumatic stress disorder. So all these the major highlights, the major time duration is important. Okay, coming back to major depressive episodes, diagnosis requires the presence of symptom for about 2 weeks. And what are symptoms that is required? As per ICD-10, there are 3 core criteria. At least 2 should be there out of this. One is depressed mood. So it is not just a depressed mood for some time. For this 2 weeks, it should be present for most of the day, and even on a single day, it should be present for almost most of the time, which is not changing with the circumstance. So it is not like that for some time you are sad, that is not depression. There is a depressed mood for most of the time in the day, which is not changing with circumstance, and is present for most of the days for a minimum of 2 weeks. Next is anhedonia. The term anhedonia is given by Ribot, and it is like actually there is loss of interest in pleasure in activities previously that was pleasurable to the individual. So those activities which was previously pleasurable to the individual, now there is loss of interest in activities. There should also be diminished energy, which leads to easy fatigability in individual. The individual gets tired easily with minimal activity and complains of intense fatigability. So 2 out of 3 core criteria should be present for diagnosis of depression. And along with this, there are some supportive criteria which you can remember by code GLASS AB. One is guilt and feeling of unworthiness, loss of self-esteem and self-confidence, diminished appetite, disturbed sleep with frequent awakenings. I think you remember that in sleep disorders we have discussed there is decreased REM latency, and which all those concepts we have discussed in disorders of sleep. There will be ideas of self-harm and maybe attempts. There will be decrease in attention and concentration. And the subject will have a bleak and a pessimistic view of future. So of these supporting criteria, if at least 2 supporting criteria is present along with the 2 major criteria, you call it as mild depression. 2 major plus at least another 4 criteria, supporting criteria, you call it as moderate depression. And all the 3 plus 5 supporting criteria, all the 3 major plus 5 supporting criteria, that will constitute the severe depression. So 2 major plus 2 minor can be mild, 2 major plus about 4 minor is moderate, and all the 3 plus 5 all are important. All those 5 criteria, or about 5 criteria of support is present, you call it for major depressive episode. So this is how you diagnose depression based on the criteria. And there was something called as, previously called as exogenous and endogenous depression. So exogenous depression was previously called as a reactive depression because that occurs following some stressors. The patient may have some stressors following which his neural circuits get altered, and he may develop the symptoms of depression. There is something called as endogenous depression. Endogenous depression actually, there is no external cause. It is mostly due to the biological changes that is happening in the individual, which cause the changes in the neurotransmitter system and cause depression. And this was previously known as vital depression, and now it's also called as somatic syndrome. So these features of somatic syndrome, so-called somatic syndrome, if they are present, then these are more in favor of endogenous depression. So to diagnose of endogenous depression or somatic syndrome, there should be 4 or more of this 8 criteria, which you can remember by a mnemonic SO email. S for sleep, there is early morning awakening. Patient will be awakening more than 2 to 3 hours earlier than what he used to do. There will be marked reduction appetite. There will be significant weight loss. There won't be any, there will be loss of emotional reactivity. That is, the patient won't be having emotional reactivity to circumstances. There won't be any emotional reactivity. And the mood changes will be observed that it will be more worse in the morning. There can be significant psychomotor agitation or retardation. There can be marked interest loss in pleasurable activities and also loss of libido. So you can remember by this code SO email of 4 or more of these are present, you consider it as somatic syndrome. So your diagnosis may be like recurrent depressive disorder, current episode, moderate depression with somatic syndrome or without somatic syndrome. If it is severe depression, it is implied that there is somatic syndrome. So these features are more in favor of some endogenous depression. Somatic syndrome components are more in favor of endogenous depression. Now, psychotic symptoms can happen in depression, and one of the important concepts is atypical depression. Please note this, it is very often asked in AIMS entrance examination what is a feature of atypical depression, and it's a much often repeated questions. You have to remember few points. I have just noted as reverse vegetative symptoms. So what is happening? Reversal of vegetative symptoms. For example, sleep. Usually in depression, there is decreased sleep, but here it is increased sleep or hypersomnia. Appetite is usually reduced in depression, but here there is increased appetite. There will be hyperphagia or increased appetite. Usually in depression there is weight loss, but here what happened? There is weight gain. And there is something called as leaden paralysis. What is leaden paralysis? Is feeling of wood-like sensation, or the patient feel the body is stiff and having wood-like sensations. So hypersomnia, hyperphagia, weight gain, leaden paralysis, these are important features of atypical depression. And another important feature is a poor response to tricyclic antidepressants and good response to monoamine oxidase inhibitors. So atypical depression is very, very important, often asked in entrance examination. So it consists of hypersomnia, hyperphagia, weight gain, then leaden paralysis, and good response to monoamine oxidase inhibitor, and poor response to tricyclic antidepressants. There is something called as involutional melancholia. It is typically reported to be found to be in ages of 45 to 60. It is considered an age where it is regressing to like older ages as told. So during this period, the patient may develop with severe anhedonia, intense nihilism, and profound guilt. So involutional melancholia features typically in old age or involuting age of 45 to 60, were presenting with intense nihilism, severe anhedonia. Nihilism means it is like feeling I am dead, or I am not existing, or I am being lost. So we will deal with the nihilism when we deal with the delusions. So there will be intense nihilism, severe anhedonia, and profound guilt. These are the features of involutional melancholia. So you should remember this. That is also very important. And there is another thing called as seasonal affective disorder. Please remember this also, seasonal affective disorder. In seasonal affective disorder, it is mainly due to changes in the light-dark setting, and so usually mainly seen in the winter season when there is a change in the duration of lighting present, and mainly related to circadian rhythm and melatonin changes, where during a particular season the patient will be having depressive symptom for about 2 to 3 months and should be present for like that for 2 years. So for about continuously for about 2 years, in each year for this period of season of winter season, for a period of this 2 to 3 months, the patient will be having symptoms of depression. And the treatment employed in this case, phototherapy is a treatment of choice. At the same time, bupropion is an antidepressant that is effective in this condition. Bupropion, we will come to it when we deal with antidepressants, but phototherapy is an important treatment of choice. You will be given the light stimulus for about of some 10,000 lux etc. of intensity will be given for early morning before the light, or before darkness in the late evenings it will be given, and this is the treatment given in seasonal affective disorder. So please be aware of these conditions: the atypical depression, involutional melancholia, and seasonal affective disorders. These are very much important. And before going to this, I also would like to mention about the theories implied. So before coming on to the pharmacological theories, I would like to mention the animal model of learned helplessness. The question often asked is learned helplessness concept was given by, that is Martin Seligman. Very important, learned helplessness. Actually, the Martin Seligman did an experiment by which in a cage he placed animal and there was a door without any lock so that the animals can go, but the door was provided with current stimulus, electrical stimulus. So whenever the animal tried to escape out, it got a current shock and it went back. So each time it tried to escape, the animal got a current shock and ultimately the animal stopped attempting to escape. These same animals were taken out and put in another cage with same system without any lock in the door, but the difference is that there was no current shock. But in spite of this new environment, the animals which have already learned with the old system stopped attempting to escape out, and this concept is called as learned helplessness. Other important concept associated with this depression is the concept of the cognitive theory of depression. So cognitive theory of depression. And the person behind this is Aaron Beck. And he is known for the cognitive behavioral therapy, and it is mainly based on the cognitive theory of depression. According to the cognitive theory of depression, a subject depression will have negative view of self, negative view of environment, negative view of future. So negative view of self, negative view of environment, and negative view of future. So negative view of self can be called as worthlessness. Negative view of environment can be called as helplessness. And negative of future as hopelessness. So triad of worthlessness, helplessness, hopelessness, or negative view of self, negative view of environment, and negative view of future. So this is a cognitive theory by the Aaron Beck. And currently the neurobiological basis mainly deals with the neurotransmitters serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine. So neurotransmitters like serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine are the monoamines. When there is deficiency in the synaptic space, synaptic cleft is present, synaptic space is present, that leads to the symptoms of depression, and that's why the monoamine theory of depression. This is a biological theory, and it is one of the bases for which the drugs known as antidepressants are made on. We will see the antidepressants of psychopharmacology, but this is a concept mainly based on the monoamine theory of the neurobiological theory of monoamine theory of depression is important. So that is what we have seen about depression. And two important questions often asked in depression is, one is the Veraguth fault and omega sign. So in an individual, what happens is that the upper nasal corner, there will be a folding, and because of raising of the eyebrows, and there will be folding of a triangular fold will be appearing in the upper nasal corner, and this is known as Veraguth fold, because Otto Veraguth was a Swiss neurologist who first found it. So Veraguth fold, V-E-R-A-G-U-T-H, Otto Veraguth. So that's called as Veraguth fold. And also there will be sometimes frowning of the forehead, which can cause wrinkling of skin in shape of an omega. That is known as omega sign. That is seen on the forehead. So the forehead there can be omega sign, and the upper nasal corner there can be Veraguth fold. So this is Veraguth fold, and here the is called as the omega sign. So please remember this also in depression. Now coming on to hypomania and mania. So till now we have seen what is depression with the severity of mild, moderate, and severe, and now we are seeing the opposite pole, that is constituted by hypomania and mania. So in hypomania and mania, it will be like both will be like the other end of the spectrum, like there will be increased elevated mood. So in both the case, there will be persistent elevated mood, there will be increased energy, there is a decreased need for sleep. That means in spite of having no sleep or less than 3 hours also, the patient is cheerful and active in the morning also. He is not wanting to sleep. We know that if we cannot sleep in the night, we will be tired and will be feel like sleepy. But here the patient will be still active and cheerful. There can be increased talk, increased familiarity towards others, and increased sexual energy. So the symptoms should be present for minimum 4 days. So all these symptoms like a persistent elevated mood, increased activity, increased energy, decreased need for sleep, over talkativeness, over familiarity, increased sexual energy will be there for minimum of 4 days to put a diagnosis of hypomania. And the symptoms won't be that disruptive as mania. But anyway, there will be a change in the functioning of the individual. You will be able to notice that there's a change of individual's behavior from the previous functioning, but it won't be as disruptive as mania. So because of this mania case, it may often go unnoticed, because the individual will be having increased mood, take interest in all the activities, take care of everything, very much cheerful, new plans, ideas, creativity, and may come in. So that maybe sometimes won't be recognized. I still remember we had a friend, a batchmate, who had these features, and when there were these features, like he was found to be very much active and cheerful. He was taking enthusiasm in all the aspects. There's no need of sleep. Night and all very active. Is increasingly talkative, increasingly familiar. Previously used not to talk much to people, but boys and girls used to be increasingly socializing. So initially just want to be like, yes, a very good, cheerful and active guy. But then gradually people started feeling that he's sometimes intruding into, he's making some inappropriate comments, some sexual jokes, etc. Some comments found to be increasingly familiar to people. Then people start feeling that, oh, he's somewhat bit, he's trying to push in, or somewhat there is a change in his behavior. So then it will be recognizing as a problem, but it won't be as disruptive or severe like in mania, and so it may be likely to be missed. So this is the feature of hypomania. When does it become mania? For diagnosis of mania, the same symptoms will be present in extreme fashion so as to cause a marked socio-occupational dysfunction or severe enough to be cause for hospitalization. So the symptoms should be present either for more than 1 week, which is severe enough to be, which cause marked socio-occupational dysfunction, and or it should be even if present for less than 1 week also, if it is severe enough to cause hospitalization. So please don't think that if hypomanic symptoms are present for more than 1 week means it will be mania. Not like that. If hypomanic symptoms are present for even for more than 1 week, but there is no marked socio-occupational dysfunction, but only some change in his individual behavior, some change only, but no socio-occupational dysfunction or so severe, you call it hypomania only. But if symptoms for more than 1 week having marked socio-occupational dysfunction and all these features, then you will call it mania. Even if it is only for 1 day or 2 days, it is severe enough to call it for hospitalization, ICD can call it mania. And in mania, there will be persistent elevated or irritable mood, increased psychomotor activity, patient will be having increased activity. There will be decreased need for sleep, over talkativeness, marked distractibility in activities. There will be flight of ideas. In flight of ideas, what is happening? There will be pressure of speech, rapid output of speech from one after another, and there will be rapid shift of ideas from one idea to another. There will be rapid shift from one idea to another, and does not have any connection. So this disorders of thought we understand by the speech of the individuals. Even if you ask him, how do you play cricket? A normal individual will tell you like there's a playground, there are 11 players, there's a team bats, team balls, and will describe the match, etc. Here the patient will be keeping on talking about cricket, then he will go into like there are 11 players, and my favorite player is Insamul Haq, he belongs to Pakistan. Pakistan countries all are having Muslims, and Muslims are there in Saudi Arabia, Muslims go to Mecca. Like that he will go from one topic to another which are having no connection. What we asked was how do you play cricket, and he goes from one topic to one topic and keeps on going and going to. So there will be pressure of speech, rapid output of speech. At the same time, there is market shifting of ideas. There is without having any logical connection to one another. There can be grandiose ideations. Patient will have a grandiose ideation or delusion. Like sometimes they will say that they are born with having special abilities which cannot be agreed upon by others. Sometimes they will tell that they are incarnation of God, or their God themselves came. We had a patient who told that I am Jesus Christ who came to save the mankind. We had a patient who told that I am the avatar of Mahavishnu and came to save the mankind. Some person who say that I have possessed enormous wealth. We had a patient who told that he is a close friend of our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the demonetization decision was taken after consultation with him like this. And they'll be having inflated self-esteem. So all these features will be there in mania. You should understand that it will be markedly disruptive and severe enough. It can be sometimes personally elevated and euphoric, cheerful, and etc. with inappropriate singing, laughing behavior, or it can be markedly irritable or disruptive behavior. And if psychotic symptoms are present, like delusion of grandiosity, we'll deal with psychotic symptoms in schizophrenia, but if psychotic symptoms, so-called psychotic symptoms are present, then you will never call it hypomania, it is mania. So, presence of symptoms severe enough to be hospitalization, presence of symptoms more than 1 week with marked socio-occupational dysfunction and disruption, presence of psychotic symptoms, all will go for mania and not hypomania. Please remember this. So, these are the features of mania and hypomania. And you should remember, there is other two entities called as cyclothymia and dysthymia, often asked in entrance examination. Cyclothymia can be put as a less severe form of bipolar disorder. It is like a chronic fluctuating mood states between the so-called hypomania and dysthymia. It won't go to depression, it won't go to mania. It will be like between this hypomania and elevated mood and so-called dysthymia. It will go on, keep on fluctuating like that, and it will be present for more than 2 years. So, and there will be not less than 2 or 3 months of symptom-free interval. For most of the time, there will be like a fluctuation between this ups and downs, which constitutes cyclothymia. Can be asked as a clinical question. So always be careful in question with duration longer than 2 years when asked in entrance examination. And dysthymia is like chronic low mood. It's like a persistent low mood. It won't amount to a depression, but it will be like a persistent low mood happening. It is like for more than 2 years. It's like a less severe form of depression, like a chronic mild depression. So it will be less severe form of depression, will be dysthymia, present for more than 2 days. And if a patient with dysthymia, if he develops depression, it is called as double depression. That is depression on dysthymia. That is known as double depression. So please remember, cyclothymia, dysthymia, and double depression. So these are very much important. And one of the important other aspect which you should remember is bipolar depression. Because when a patient comes to you in depression, he can be in the depressive phase of a bipolar illness. So there can be unipolar depression and there can be bipolar depression. So the thing is that the importance of recognizing bipolar depression is that if you simply give antidepressants, there is a risk of patient going to the opposite pole or switching to manic phase. So should be careful always in dealing with bipolar depression. The management will be antipsychotics or mood stabilizers will be required. We will come to it. So early age of onset of depressive symptoms, psychotic depressions in young age, postpartum depressions, depression with marked psychomotor retardation, atypical features that we have discussed, very important, and family history of bipolarity, so-called cyclothymic temperament, history of having hypomanic features when previously given antidepressant, mixed state. Mixed state is, which you should understand, it's like the presence of both manic and depressive symptoms in the same period of illness is called as mixed state. All these are some features which are predictive of more likelihood of bipolar depression and should be vigilant in identifying these cases. And also, few things you should understand is regarding mania, there is something called as rapid cycling and ultra rapid cycling and ultradian or ultra rapid cycling. So rapid cycling means if there are 4 or more episodes in an year, it is called as rapid cycling. If there are 4 or more episodes in a month, it is called as ultra rapid cycling. And if there is more severe rapid change of episodic within a day, it is called as ultradian or ultra rapid cycling. So rapid cycling, ultra rapid cycling, and ultradian cycling. Please understand. There are few entities you should understand, particularly the postpartum phenomenon. It is very important. Postpartum blues, postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis are often asked. So postpartum blues, and this is particularly, see, postpartum period, the period up to within 6 months of delivery is a vulnerable period of having psychiatric symptoms, particularly because rapid change of hormones are there, and that's why females are particularly prone for depressive symptoms, and particularly they are very much prone in the postpartum period. So because of the rapid change in the so-called biological functions and a rapid change in the so-called the hormonal levels. There will be ups and downs of hormone levels, etc. The estrogen, progesterone, etc. So this can happen. Postpartum blues. How will this often asked as a clinical scenario? Postpartum blues usually begins in 2 to 3 days of usually postpartum period of delivery, and the subject will be having some tearfulness, some anxiety, some sadness, some mild tearfulness, anxiety, sadness, etc. will be there, which is present in 2 to 3 days often after the delivery, but will resolve completely by 2 weeks. So by day 14, all this will be resolved. It may develop in 2 to 3 days with some tearfulness, some worry, some anxiety, etc. may happen, but it will resolve within 2 weeks. With reassurance and support, it will resolve by itself, and it is very common, postpartum blues, and does not require any treatment. Postpartum depression, usually within 3 to 6 months, within up to 6 months of post-delivery, the patient will develop with depressive symptoms. Person low mood, sadness, not feeling like living, not able to take care of baby, feeling fatiguability and feeling not wanting to leave. This condition is severe, and it may even end up in suicidal ideations and decreased care for baby, decreased neglect for baby, and with suicidal ideations, a lot of things can happen. Feeling that I'm not worthy, etc. A lot of things, and feeling that there is no point me and baby leaving, etc. So this should be treated with medications. Antidepressants should be required in many cases. So this should be important to recognize this. Postpartum psychosis usually develop with less than 8 weeks within delivery, with less than 8 weeks, and presents with psychotic symptoms. The patient may have delusion that somebody is trying to harm the baby or take away the baby. Fearfulness will be there markedly. So delusions, hallucinations of hearing voices sometimes can happen, like somebody calling, etc. Some experiences. Fearfulness that the baby is changed or taken away, baby is trying to be harmed, etc. Something bad is going to happen. Lot of things can happen. Will be sleep disturbances, mood changes. Lot of things will be happening, and they'll be having psychotic symptoms, which we will see in schizophrenia. What are psychotic symptoms? So all this will be present, and usually develops less than 8 weeks postpartum, and it requires prompt treatment with antipsychotic management, otherwise which can cause harm to the self and baby, like postpartum depression. So postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis. So postpartum blues 2 to 3 days and resolve within 2 weeks. Postpartum depression in 3 to 6 months post-delivery and requires treatment. All else can prolong. Postpartum psychosis usually in less than 8 weeks post-delivery and with psychotic symptoms. There is something called as premenstrual dysphoric disorder or premenstrual syndrome, usually seen in females, which is seen usually following decreasing the levels of estrogen, presenting with irritability, mood changes, sadness, fatigability, dysphoric mood, etc. And it will improve with the rising levels of estrogen. So severity will decrease with increase in estradiol. So short course of SSRIs or antidepressants, etc. will be useful, and severity will decrease with rising trend of estradiol in that part of menstrual phase. So the symptoms will be mainly in that. This will be mainly in that premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Okay, so that is important. And once in NIMHANS, a question was asked in premenstrual syndrome, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which are the major neurotransmitters. Which of the following is not an important neurotransmitter was the question, with endorphin, serotonin, GABA, and dopamine were the options. Should remember that the major in that premenstrual conditions, that premenstrual syndrome and dysphoric disorders, the major neurotransmitters are endorphin, serotonin, and GABA. These are the three major. Dopamine is maybe irrelevant, but endorphin, serotonin, and GABA are the major 3 neurotransmitters which are implicated in this premenstrual syndrome conditions. They are very much important in this condition. So be aware of this. So these are the important things that you should note with regard to depression. One is diagnosis of major depressive episode, hypomania and mania. Then the cognitive theory of depression, learned helplessness theory of depression by Martin Seligman, and cognitive theory of depression. Remember atypical depression clearly. Also remember the features: involutional melancholia, seasonal affective disorder, atypical depression. These terminologies and features should be remembered clearly, and also have an idea about bipolar depression and rapid cycling, ultra rapid cycling, ultradian cycling. Just have a term. Then another important area often asked is who gave the social theory of suicide. So depression, suicide, we have talked a lot. The social theory of suicide was given by Emil Durkheim. This is another important question often asked. Who gave the social theory of suicide? That is by Emil Durkheim. Just remember this, it is Emil Durkheim. And also another question is Kubler-Ross, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is famous for stages of grief following death, bereavement of loved one. So stages of grief, which of the following is not a stage of grief, was often asked as a question. You can remember by the code as DABDA. This is also often asked in entrance examination. D for denial. After hearing the death of initially there will be a shock and the subject won't believe that it has happened. Maybe in films and all you have seen that subject saying nahi ye nahi ho sakta, or this won't happen, he is not dead. So this is called as denial. And next comes anger. The subject will feel angry towards God, subject will feel angry towards doctor. Sometimes they will be angry towards doctor for not saving, etc. The next phase will be anger. So first is denial, next is anger. Third is bargain. So denial, anger, bargain. So in bargain, they will tell to God, oh God, if you give him back, I will, or if I get him back, I will give you that offering, I will give my life extra, I will put bargains. So maybe two people, so will put bargains. So if I can get him back, I will do whatever, like I will offer so much to temple, etc. We'll make sort of offerings, etc. So denial, anger, bargain. Next will be depression. The subject will go into a phase of grief and depression, won't like to do things, won't like loss of interest in activities, feel like not able to do things, feel dejected, etc. And the last phase is acceptance. Will accept that death is a part of reality and will accept that he is dead. So DABDA is a code. This is important. Often question is asked, which of the following is not a feature of the stages of grief of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross? Denial, anger, bargain, depression, acceptance. So remember by the code as DABDA: denial, anger, bargain, depression, and acceptance. So these are the important areas of which you should remember. These are very important areas. Once a question was asked, which of the following neurotransmitter is implicated in suicides? You should very well remember that it is serotonin. So mainly the implied neurotransmitter is serotonin. That is why mainly monoamines, particularly serotonin, has got a very important role. So it's much implied in the so-called phenomenon. So these are very important areas. So understand this depression, mania, hypomania, this different types and entities, and this stages of grief, so-called atypical depression, all the parameters, etc. The pharmacological aspect will be separately dealt in pharmacology. So these are very important. So with that, we come to the end of the chapter of mood disorders. Hope the things are clear to you. Thank you very much.